Hello, good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily coming to you live. And this is the Lagos studio. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Good morning from Abuja. Welcome. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Well, we're going to be starting straight with the newspaper review this morning. We're joined by Mr. Bolaji Adebiyi, who is the Vice President West Zone of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, is with us this morning. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much.
And compliments of the season.
Yeah, I wish you same.
It's usually a very interesting season around journalism and let's say for the papers as well. That's when you see all manner of headlines.
Yes.
Everybody focusing on their own thing.
Yes.
And sometimes perhaps that can be good. Variety is the spice of life.
Yeah, precisely.
So let us kickstart with this one from Daily Times. The Daily Times is the paper we'll start with this morning. And they have this: Electoral Act Amendment. MBF ex-ACF scribe tackle Malami over Buhari's non-assent of bill. Denounce AGF's claim that President signing the bill would throw Nigeria into crisis. Okay, I'm not very familiar with the acronym because they're all manners of acronym. But I'm just wondering, MBF, what group?
Is a Middle Belt Forum.
Oh, okay, that would be Middle Belt Forum. Ex-ACF scribe, that's the Arewa Consultative Forum.
Yes,
okay. Okay, Middle Belt Forum, ex-ACF scribe tackle Malami over Buhari's non-assent of bill. Just wondering, this President's non-assent of the bill is still raging somewhat. We've been told that, now that the bills have been stepped down, is it stepped down now?
Well,
it's been returned to, to the National Assembly. The ball is in their court. They decided to step down what to do with it until they return. I don't know whether you've heard anything about what is going on behind the scenes right now. Should we be paying attention to what's going on there, or should we just wait until they resume?
No, definitely not. Well, as journalists, we need to know what is going on, particularly because of the importance of the bill. Many Nigerians actually believe that bill, has a lot of, positive clauses, that could move us closer to electoral fidelity. And the president non-assent to the bill, took many people unawares. Some said they were not surprised. Personally, I wasn't surprised, but many people were surprised because they thought that the contentious clause there, which has to do with direct primaries, that since the president was a direct beneficiary of that system of primaries, that he will sign the bill. But we all know how influential the governors could be, and they are still. And it was clear to me that with the move by the governors against that clause, that the president might not sign the bill. But quite a lot of people thought that the president could have signed the bill and then negotiated, a review of that clause. But as it has happened, he decided, most likely because of the recommendation of his Attorney General, that he should not sign the bill. But I think that that was the wrong move on the part of the president. He could have signed the bill and then negotiated a review of that clause. That had been done in the past, particularly with regards to budgets. Presidents signed budgets, and then they agreed that those contentious clauses will be amended.
So perhaps it's no surprise then that they're denouncing the AGF's claim that President signing the bill will throw Nigeria into chaos. I mean, the AGF seems to be the singular person they picked on this one, despite the fact that the President wrote to a number of bodies, from what we understand, for advice over whether or not to sign this particular bill. But in terms of the security being overstretched, did you think that was also a very plausible reason for not wanting to sign the bill into law?
No, I don't think so, because the primaries we hold in it is assumed that the primaries will hold in the wards. So elections take place even at units, which are smaller than wards. So if you have general elections and they could supervise general elections, why can't they supervise the primaries? Now, primaries do not have to hold in all the wards. Okay. They could hold in local governments, and they could actually hold at a particular spot. So I believe that the president must have been, well, he ought not to be misinformed because he himself had been part of that process before. So the security argument, I think, is a flimsy argument in my view. In any case, we have, I think, about 2 major political parties, you know, and if you want to stretch it, say about 3 or 4. So if all of them are holding their primaries, I do not see why the security, security agencies could not secure those primaries. After all, it is the work of the security agencies to design the strategy for securing the country, whether it is election or it is any other matter.
Well, I want to move away from politics now. Let's take a look at the picture, very telling. It's the festive season and we mustn't forget that. That picture shows the army chiefs, beg your pardon, the military chiefs, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahya, that's the Chief of Army Staff, Air Marshal Amao, Chief of Air Staff, and others when they joined wounded and recuperating soldiers, widows and women of the Nigerian Army and very senior military officers at the May Malari cantonment for the 2021 Christmas luncheon. So we do know that the military chiefs have been spending some time in Maiduguri, and looks like they've also been taking a position of servants to their own people. I think is a rather heartwarming picture.
Yes, precisely. Very good. At least what we have always heard is that widows and relatives of wounded soldiers and dead soldiers are not properly taken care of.
Yeah.
So I think this will be a morale booster for the troops and for many Nigerians. I think this is a positive thing to have been done by the military chiefs.
Indeed. Well, yes, some other stories on the front page of the Daily Times. We'll leave you to do that yourself if you pick up a copy of the Daily Times there. But you also see that story right on top of the nameplate. Nothing abnormal contracting COVID-19, says presidency. That story is also there as well. I'm going to leave Ayo to quickly flip to leadership.
Well, yeah, I think I want to go with New Telegraph first this morning, because it's like the Daily Times is responding to what's on the front page of the New Telegraph newspaper this morning. Why Buhari won't sign electoral bill by Malami, says financial implications of president's assent for political parties. States financial implications of president's assent for political parties, and says FG financing capital projects with recovered loot. And of course, another rider, National Assembly members bombed bill with direct primaries, says Sage. Well, a lot has been said about that already this morning. You'll find the story on pages 2 and 4. But right beside the picture and under it, you'll find two pictures, two stories, Mr. Adibi, that I think I'd love for you to, refer to. Beside the picture, you have Sri Lanka closes Nigeria, German embassies and missions from January 2022. Foreign reserves plunged to $1.58 billion. And right under the picture, you see IPs. 1,173 foreign mission workers may forfeit January's salaries. Well, while both of them may not be related, directly, but the fact that they both have reference to foreign missions speaks volumes, don't you think?
Yeah, okay. The foreign missions, we've been having challenges with our foreign missions, particularly in terms of funding. And I think that efforts to solve that problem, have not really succeeded. So I think that it's something that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, will really need to look at.
Is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs also going to have anything to say to the fact that the country Sri Lanka is closing the Nigerian and German embassies missions from January 2022? One wonders why in particular. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with diplomatic relations, really. Just that the country is trying to, conserve its own foreign currency reserves. So I'm just wondering, any reason that you think Nigeria came on that list?
I wouldn't know. I think they will have given their reasons to the Foreign Affairs Ministry. So I wouldn't know why they did that, but you have already suggested that it might have to do with their own funding plan for their foreign missions.
That's actually what you will find in the story. That's the New Telegraph this morning, Malpe.
Thank you, Aya. Let's quickly look at the Vanguard newspapers. A few of them just came in now. Let's take a look at this. The Vanguard has this. Malami's defense of Buhari's veto triggers outrage. That's also being reported as well. His claims baseless. That's from the Middle Belt Forum. Is that Middle Belt Forum now?
Yeah, Middle Belt Forum.
That's the Middle Belt Forum. Direct primary produced Buhari in 2019. That's from Sani, ex-ACF scribe. He's playing on our fears for violence for selfish end. That's from, okay, this is another one I don't know. JACNYA. You might want to see what the full meaning of the acronym. Development, a tragedy for government. That's from Padi Banjo. Malami speaking in a confusing manner. Afeni Ferry. It shows government can't address constitutional challenges. That's from Shoni Barre. Now, that is a very telling one. The government cannot address constitutional challenges, especially when you think of the fact that we have voted 1 billion naira in the budget, 2022 budget, to address constitutional amendment. But page 5 is where we have all of the details. You might comment on it if you want to, but I want to quickly go to the story on security, which is at the bottom. Bandits kill in Zamfara villages, kidnap over 33 women. That is on the front page as well. Security continues to remain a challenge, even in this season. I don't know, have we seen sufficient efforts? Because there have been talks around declaring these people, the bandits, terrorists. We've seen some moves in the court, but we're yet to see an official government pronouncement that they are now being called terrorists. Do you think that's what's delaying the onslaught which we should be seeing against this group of people terrorizing our country?
Well, I think it's important that quite important that the media, has continued to focus on these two major issues. Well, the issue of the electoral bill and that of security. Well, I think that the federal governments, and maybe the military itself, needs to explain to us what is really going on. We have spent billions of dollars, on security equipment, on military platforms, and we were told in the past that it was because the military lacked this equipment, that was why they were unable to make significant impact. But we have spent a lot of money, on all of this, and we are still not getting what we still get, are still the dominance of this of insecurity, in the nation. So I think that maybe we are not being told what is going on. I believe that the media, has done a great job, focusing on this issue. But it's not everything that the media, every information that the media gets in relation to this that it will publish. Even the little that they are publishing, they have been criticized, for being. They say they are unpatriotic and that they are dramatizing the problem. But I think the problem persists, and that there are things that we don't know that we are not being told by government. Otherwise, if we had spent so much money, on the security agencies, why do bandits who ride, as one senator said, they ride on motorcycles and they use AK-47? Why have they become a problem, for the security agencies? And certainly it can no longer be a question of lack of intelligence. We have several security intelligence agencies. So this problem ought to, have been raised. So certainly, there are certain things that we don't know, that the military and the federal government know that they are not telling us.
Well, perhaps we might not really be interested in knowledge. What we really want is security at the end of the day.
If they tell us, we'll be able to help them.
Okay. That's
I was in government before, and what I used to tell my superiors is, look, you cannot assume to know more than Nigerians. Even this issue of security, you cannot assume to know better than them. If you tell them the challenges you are facing, they probably will be able to come up with better ideas. So this idea that government has superior knowledge, well, it may be true in certain cases, but it's not true in all cases. So you need to come clean, and then the people may be able to suggest to you some things may not have occurred to you, that if you come clean and you make it public, the public may be able to help.
Well, perhaps they're also working on it, because you also see right on the front page there, 17 months enough to end insecurity before Buhari leaves office. That is attributed to the presidency. So perhaps they have something up their sleeves. We don't know, but maybe page 15 might give a little more details to that one.
Well, definitely government will not be will not be sleeping. They will be doing a lot. There's no doubt about that. But what I'm saying is that they need to be more open with what they are doing. Yes, they need to be more open. There has to be more transparency. Yeah.
Well, your favorite Mr. and Mrs. is on the front page of the Vanguard. Perhaps I'll leave you to do it yourself. Yes, Ayo, sorry. You'll have to pick up a copy of the Vanguard to see what Mr. and Mrs. is saying this morning. And that goes out to all the fans as well. Let's leave it there for Vanguard newspapers.
We could protest, but, you know, maybe not just today. The Guardian newspaper is next, and it leads with this one on its front page. 2021, weak incomes, inflation, push investors away from rights issues. And you have the rider, Nigerians may lose ownership of listed firms over loans for rights. How weak growth, sluggish NGX performance, Forex scare investors. 10 firms lists 906 billion shares on NGX in 2021 as investors initiate sell-offs. Well, the story is on the front page, continues on the inside pages. Weak incomes and inflation push investors away. This is also coming at the behest of that news that made the rounds, that Nigerians' buying power of anything is getting weaker. And now this, Study B, what do you make of it?
Well, I think the story itself is explicit enough. Most Nigerians know that their income, you know, can hardly buy anything. And the greatest evidence of that is even the festive period. You walk around, you don't find people doing what we call merriments, you know. So I think that essentially it still has to do with the economy. The economy remains extremely weak, and many Nigerians are just unable, you know, to find their way through it.
Well, talking about merriment, find on the front page of that same newspaper, children having fun at the Ndubuisi Kano Park to mark the holiday in Lagos. well, anyway, exactly. All right, well, there's also another story right under the picture, 4 of them, but there's this one that is interesting. National Assembly yet to transmit 2022 budget, 3 days to New Year. And one wonders, will we still be able to achieve that January to December cycle?
We still have 2 working days, even 3. We have tomorrow, work will resume. We also Thursday and Friday. So it will still be transmitted within those 3 days. I believe it's still possible for them to transmit.
All right, well, that's the Guardian newspaper this morning.
And Daily Trust has this: COVID-19 experts harp on vaccination as cases surge. It reduces severity of virus when infected. That's someone speaking. Nigeria records 29 coronavirus deaths in 48 hours. So it does seem that this has just gone beyond infections. We are now recording deaths, and so people shouldn't take that for granted. But then I think we saw somewhere how Lagos is reported to have run out of vaccines. There have been questions as to how the vaccines are being distributed. Some people say, and perhaps this might be for the authorities to weigh in on, you know, they will want to ensure equal distribution to states, at least some fair distribution, but it will seem that the uptake of it is higher in some states than others. How would you suggest the federal government responds in a situation like that?
Well, you know, it's the same way we distribute resources in the country. You know, you want equality of states and all that. I think that what the Ministry of Health needs to do is to find a better formula of distributing the vaccines. The infection is more endemic in certain states. I mean, more populous states like Lagos and Kano. So I think that the Ministry of Health, they have their data, but they need to push the vaccines, you know, to those more endemic states. That's one. And the secondly is that more job has to be done, you know, to get people, you know, to accept vaccination. You know, we hear stories of vaccines, you know, expiring because people just did not accept to vaccinate. So the federal government needs to look for, you know, another formula.
Did they really not accept to vaccinate, or perhaps the measures to help them take the vaccines came late? Because we saw in recent times, if Lagos has finally run out of vaccines, it's not going to be surprising. But because we saw vaccination centers now spreading going to meet the people in churches, in mosques, in playgrounds, and all other areas, which a lot of people had been advocating before now. That if you leave it in the hospitals, the chances are very slim that people will just wake up and go to the hospital to go and be vaccinated. But if you take it out, the chances are higher that wherever people who are desirous of taking a vaccine see it, perhaps they will take it there as well. So if that is a method that they have now adopted, the chances are very high that we'll be saying, you know, stories like Lagos runs out of vaccines. The question now will be, if that method is being employed everywhere else and the uptake is not as high, shouldn't we deploy more to where it will seem that people are more willing or are more enlightened about the vaccine and are willing to take it?
Yeah, that's what I've just said. The federal government now needs to, you know, rethink its strategy for distribution. But I also still think that there's still a lot of hesitancy. Okay, but that is no longer the issue in a place like Lagos, where they no longer, I mean, they are having shortage of the vaccines. Then the other issue also is that we were told in the past that some of the state governments, you know, were prepared, you know, to pay for the vaccines, to import them, you know, but the federal government insisted, you know, on, you know, for obvious reasons of being the sole, you know, importer of the vaccines. So that should be part of, if there are state governments that are ready, you know, to pay, you know, they should allow them to pay, and then the federal government can make it available to them. But what is more important is that the federal government definitely needs to rethink its distribution strategy to ensure that, you know, states that are endemic you know, have access to the vaccines.
Okay, they have a number of other stories for you. They have this one, 2021, Aso Rock's ups and downs. It looks like it's going to be an interesting holiday read. And look at this. Why Ogun lost $16 billion Dangote refinery to Lagos. That's according to the governor of Ogun State, Abiodun. He's speaking. There are a number of other stories at the bottom as well, some of them not so bright this morning. But look at this, how Nigeria exported over 100 billion naira worth airplanes to Ghana in 2021. I don't know what the story is about, but
I haven't read it.
Okay.
I don't understand what you mean by exported planes.
Exactly, because I'm wondering, we don't manufacture planes, but we don't know. You might want to read the story on page 11 of the paper. And of course, in the spirit of the season, a lot of people are traveling. There's very sad tragedy. 8-year-old dies, many injured as bus plunges into Lagos River. I don't know if you've had the time to travel at all in this season, but or if you've...
I came from Abuja, but by air. so I wouldn't be able to describe, you know, what has been happening on the road.
On the road.
You know, but if the roads are bad, then of course they will be prone to accidents.
Well, we do hope that people will be a little more careful on the roads. They also have this. Daily Independent has this one: low capacity COVID-19 curb aviation performance in 2021. Additional 30 aircraft expected in 2022. That's what the Daily Independent has on the front page for you this morning. And you also see COVID-19 Omicron. Nigeria may witness increased hospitalizations, deaths. Experts warn, say Omicron variant cases underreported. Oh, that's what we're seeing on the front pages. That's where we'll have to leave it this morning. We have to thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
On our newspaper review this morning, Mr. Bolaji Adebiyi is the Vice President of the West Zone of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Thank you so much for joining us
You're
on
welcome.
Sunrise Daily this morning. Once again, compliments of the season.
I wish you same.
We'll take a break at this point. We'll be back shortly. Please stay with us. Well, we're starting with the topic of leadership. 2022 is going to be the year where a lot of selection and, well, I use selection very carefully because even though they're going to be elected, the final elections will not take place until 2023. And you know that one of the contentious points in the Electoral Act, which was sent back by the president or vetoed by the president, is that clause on direct and indirect primaries. And sometimes in the indirect primaries method, it will seem that it's a selection that takes place. But whatever means parties agree to get their people, elected in their primaries is going to be happening in 2022. And there are questions as to, first, what sort of people should we be looking at? Should we leave political parties alone to their own devices and just wait for them to throw up the candidates for the people to vote? Or should the people be interested in what is happening in the political parties to say what sort of candidates they want to see thrown up by the political parties? To say that if political parties do not, bring up a minimum of a leader who meets a minimum quality or criteria of leadership which the people require, then perhaps that party is going to be suffering a rejection by the electorate. So there needs to be a conversation around that, and we hope to kickstart that just about now with Kenneth Okoineme, who is a member strategy team of the Not Too Young to Run movement, and also People for Change National Advisor, Nigeria of Action Aid. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Good morning, and compliments of the season to Nigerians.
I wish you the same on behalf of Nigerians who perhaps are wishing you the same, but you cannot hear. It is quite a period that we're witnessing already. If you drive around Abuja now, I do not know about other cities. I've been here for quite a while now, but I'm sure if you drive around the Federal Capital Territory, you'll begin to see billboards put up either by supporters of potential candidates or even candidates by themselves who are looking to vie for different offices, some within their political parties, others already in preparation for 2023, especially the presidential hopeful, so to speak. So that is already beginning to happen in the Federal Capital Territory. I haven't seen the billboards of anyone who's young, so there'll be questions as to what gains have we seen so far from the Not Too Young to Run bill, which was passed into law.
Thank you, first and foremost, for having me this morning and for putting on the table this very pertinent question of leadership and what kind of leadership Nigerians should be looking forward to as the 2023 election comes by. I think, for me, one of the most important issues that we have to deal with is that first and foremost is that we recognize that leadership has always been a challenge in the country. It is well documented that we have had issues of leadership, and so therefore at this point in time that question around leadership now takes that front burner. And what should Nigerians be looking for in a leader that we want to see in 2023? But it is important to first and foremost put on the table some of these challenges so that we can recognize where we're coming from. And for me, one of the things that captures it most succinctly is even on the program you just had with the Honorable Minister of Transport, hard talk, I guess.
Hard copy.
Hard copy, I guess. And you know that question of blaming past leaders for the challenges of today, or, you know, those challenges being the reason why we are here today. And so one of the key things that, for me, leadership should provide is that must have a very strong capacity to analyze what the issues have been, understanding what the problems are. It's part of leadership, because at the end of the day, the society we are in, the challenges we face today is one that requires transformation. And so therefore we need transformational leadership. And for transformational leadership to happen, it means there must be a very strong understanding of what the challenges are. You cannot put up solutions to challenges that you don't know what they are. And so for me, one of the things is about how Nigerians are able to communicate the challenges that we have as a country, because that's the starting point for providing leadership that can transform some of these challenges. And so for 2022, 2023, as we move closer, those are some of the things that we must, at the initial, begin to ask people questions about. There are a lot of challenges in the country around how we have managed our politics, how we have managed our diversity. All of those issues are key in ensuring that, okay, you are not just coming to tell me that, these are the challenges of security, these are the challenges of the economy, this is how we are going to deal. No, you must be able to articulate it in a way that provides a clear insight into how these challenges have emerged. Of course, there are researches, people have talked about it, but from a personal point of view, from a transformational point of view, where you are vying for public office, where we are going to trust you with public resources, where we are going to trust you with managing this whole chaos and mess that we are in, then you must be able to tell us where we're coming from and how you're going to deal with that. And for me, that's the first step about what we are going to, how we are going to deal with the challenge of leadership. And that brings me to the question of what then is transformational leadership for Nigeria? Because whether we like it or not, the kind of leadership that is required to take us out of the challenges that we presently are, because of course we know the state of infrastructure, insecurity. Nigeria is presently the poverty capital of the world. So if you must deal with that, are you going to keep on doing the same things that have been done before? We have seen that our politics have been built around recycling, So people are stuck with ideas. People are stuck with a certain way of managing the politics to achieve whatever goals or vision they have for the country. So if you bring on those same characteristics in terms of how you intend to deal with these challenges, then I am very sure we are not going to make so much of a progress, because where we are now is a product of this politics. It's a product of the kind of power negotiations that happen. So how are Nigerians going to think through all of these and listen to that person that is able to articulate a different perspective around all of this? Of course, nothing is new, but we must chart a different route. There are a lot of opportunities, and for every country, times like this are moments where giant leaps are taken. And so we must be able to put that on the table.
Well, we'll see how that happens. We are Kenneth is not alone with us this morning. We're also being joined virtually by a number of other guests. We have, excuse me, Toye Shobande, who is a strategic leadership consultant. He's a lawyer and also President Stevens Leadership Consultancy, member International Leadership Association, and is a doctoral candidate in strategic leadership at Regent University in the United States. You're welcome to the program, Mr. Shobande.
Thank you. Good morning and Merry Christmas, or compliments of the season.
Compliments of the season to you too. Simi Fajamirokun is also with us this morning. She is a managing partner, Acropolis Consulting, and former aspirant for the House of Reps in 2019. You're also welcome to the program this morning, Simi.
Thank you very much for having me. Compliments of the season.
I wish you the same. Well, interesting conversation we've started to have with Kenneth, who's here in our studios in Abuja, who's saying we need to be interested in the processes in 2022, because that's what's going to throw up the candidates whom Nigerians will vote for in 2023. Let me start with you, Simi, because you have been a part of the process before now, in 2019. What was it like when you tried to, contest, when you were thrown up as one of the candidates to be voted into office in 2019?
Well, as an aspirant, not a candidate, it was a very interesting experience, but it wasn't new because I've worked as a political consultant in our democracy for the past 10 years. I've worked with, so from a state level politics to national level politics to local government politics. I mean, I've been able to see across the different spectrum. And for me, I would say it gave me more hope than I've ever had in this country before. Though the last day of the primary elections were botched because of the indecision of the midnight of the primary elections, we were told we were going to change from indirect primaries to direct primaries. But outside of that, that scuttle of the process at that dying hour, the process was pretty interesting. Like I said, I left that experience more hopeful about politics in Nigeria than I've ever been before. I don't look like a typical politician. I don't sound like a politician. I ran in the FCT and I wasn't from the FCT. So a lot of people didn't even know. Initially, people were actually questioning if it was legal for me to run in a state that is not my state of origin. I got that question probably, 8 out of 10 times. So that let us know that even we, although we're clamoring for change, we want change, we don't really even understand what our politics is in Nigeria. So what was handed to us from 99 is the way that we've carried on without actually actively engaged. So when we don't actively engage, you can see the questions where, oh, you're not Muslim, how can you be running in the northern parts of Nigeria? Or your state of origin is from Ondo, how can you be running in the FCT? And these were from learned folks. I found that the more interesting that the people of the grassroots have more of an understanding of how politics works than my colleagues and in the workplace or in the business world. And like I said, I found it very interesting. You said an introduction. In your introduction was the process. Should we be interested in the process of our politics? Absolutely. Because by the time we get to general election, we literally are usually stuck between a rock and a hard place, typically between two bad choices. I think as a people, we need to be more interested in party politics because that is the main election, because then you have the luxury of choice. But I think we're robbed of choice when we look away from our primary election and everyone is just focused on the general election. So for instance, when trying to fundraise for a primary election, you find most people, particularly in the private sector, tell you, go and get your ticket. When you win the ticket of the party, then we'll support you. And that needs to actually be the reverse. Because if those who believe in your values, believe in your style of leadership, believe in what you stand for, they actually should bring out the funds during your primary elections, and your general elections will almost always take care of itself to a certain point, because people want to, people like the winning team. So when you get your ticket, especially if you're in a major party, you most likely will find it much easier to crowdfund or to source for funding. So a lot of the erroneous perception that we have towards politics in Nigeria, I found out from running myself. So for instance, funding was a major issue, not for me, but it was a major issue for people to fund a primary election because they felt the general election was a main election. Wrong. The process of election, people didn't really know what indirect primaries meant, what direct primaries meant. And for me, if more people got engaged, the democracy is about numbers. We don't have enough numbers of people who actually know better on the political party system. Because if you had numbers in the political party system, you won't have the madness of changing the mode of an election at midnight of the election from indirect to direct or direct to indirect. It just wouldn't happen.
Well, Simi, just listening to you, I think that, perhaps interviewing you will take the whole of the 2 hours of this show, because I'm sure you have, you definitely will have the experience worth a book to tell about your experience. But let me quickly come to Tayo Shobande talking about being interested in the primaries itself. I mean, Simi has already said that we need the primaries themselves at the elections. That's where we have the luxury of picking a leader that will eventually come out at the end of the day, who will be agreeable to all. The question is, how do we begin to get involved in primaries, and how do we pressure political parties, to throw up the sort of candidates that we eventually state as the qualities that we want to see in a leader that will lead us, I don't want to say out of where we are, but to the Nigeria that we desire.
Thank you. I actually enjoyed Simi's contributions, and I was quite amazed at how she arranged her thought process to land at this point, which I think is very fantastic. The first problem is this: our narrative and our language has to change. And how do I mean? We are inherently focused on a leader, or focused on grooming or electing a leader whom we think will change everything, throw out his magic wand, and everything will be perfect with our country. But that is not true. I agree we should be interested in the process. But the process is not about evolving a leader through a particular political party of choice. To solve this problem, my proposition is for us to focus on developing an effective leadership system right from the grassroots down to the local and down to the national bit. And that can happen between now and next year, actually. It's a long-term project. Aside changing our narrative and our language, we should also change our perspective about these issues. That solving Nigeria's problem is not just going to be with one election year. It's not going to happen in a tenure, a 4-year term, or 2 tenures or 2 terms of a president or a governor. It's going to take us, the decadence did not happen in 10 years. It did not happen in 20 years. So we should be prepared for a long-term project. Hence why I said we need to develop a leadership system. And what do I mean by a leadership system? We often confuse the word leader with leadership. Having a title or holding political positions does not necessarily qualify someone for leadership. And it does not actually make you a leader. You can be a ruler. But back to our electoral process. If we do not have an effective leadership system, Simi and many other Nigerians who are genuinely interested in the transformation of this country will keep experiencing that frustration when they get to enter into those political parties. Because some people literally own the political party. And their sense of entitlement is that, look, we've invested our resources into the political parties, we have our interests, we have our ideologies, even though they are not spelled out.
And there's something that you said now that interests me, if you don't mind me butting in very quickly. You said that, you kind of drew a difference between a leader and a ruler. Perhaps there is a need to have that understanding. Who is a leader and who is a ruler? Which one has been predominant in our nation? And how do people begin to identify those qualities so that when it comes to the time to choose, they know who to choose or what to look out for?
Thank you. Thank you, Ayo, for saying that, because I was going to drive home that point. We've been used to rulership so much that we do not identify, when a leader shows up, we think he's a saint and is somebody that is very special with special abilities. When you're so used to something that is bad and something good shows up, you think this person is special. He has special abilities, special skills. This is it. What differentiates those two individuals, the ruler and the leader, is this. In my doctoral research and over the years of research and work in different capacity, I have come to define leadership with just 2-3 words. And this is it. Leadership is taking responsibility. I'm going to stop at that. There are other things after that. The ruler does not take responsibility for the problems and for the solution. The ruler rather feels entitled that it is what I say, based on what I know, that should happen, not what the people know. And the body language of those who are in rulership in this nation communicates that clearly. They don't need to tell us that expressly, the body language. Look at the issues we've been debating over the past few weeks, from signing electoral bill to this, the body language. That body language is a major communication terminology. And if you want to know a ruler, see the way a ruler communicates is different from the way a leader communicates. A leader communicates to seek understanding with the people he leads. Is to engender trust and buy-in from the people he leads. The ruler does not need your trust. He does not need your buy-in. So when you want to go to the post to elect someone, check out for the body language, not only of that individual, or people around them, and the body language of the political system they evolved from. Are they people who listen and who engage people in the conversation? Are they communicative? Are they consensus-oriented? Are they benevolent in their approach to leadership? Are they populist in their orientation? And I wrote a book titled The Leadership Myth: Why Leadership Development Principles Do Not Work in Sub-Saharan Africa. And this is a 7-year project. I started this project on a visit on holiday to Abu Dhabi. And I kept asking myself, I flew from London to Abu Dhabi, and that was my first time of flying in this airline that very massive structure. I'm trying to remember the name now. Awesome, beautiful experience. I landed in Abu Dhabi. I enjoyed my time. And I kept asking myself a question. How did these people transform this nation? At about the same time Nigeria started, similar with Singapore, how did they transform this nation to become? That question led me to reading books about their leadership. And that's how I came across the book written by the Sheikh, titled My Vision. It opened my eyes to understanding that it is not, because the way most leaders communicate, they make the whole system about them, about their interests, and not about the people. Then two, they always communicate within the range of their tenure, 4 years, 8 years, second term. Everything is about the tenure. That is not leadership. That is rulership. Okay. Anyone who communicates what they want to achieve within 4 years is unrealistic. Okay. Anyone who communicates what they think the nation can become within 8 years is equally unrealistic. That is not leadership.
There's so much to unpack in all of these conversations, and we will have significant time to talk more about some of these things, including what the young generation would want to bring to the table, given the opportunity. But let me take this to Mr. Koineme just before we go on the break. Now, Do you agree with some of the things that you have heard from both parties, especially concerning who a ruler is and who a leader is?
Of course, I agree completely, because as they have put it succinctly, the challenges of being a leader and leadership are two different things completely. And of course, we know that we are coming from a history where decisions that border on how society is run is taken by a group of persons, and of course our military history. And so that has permeated into our democratic experience, where people continue to elude themselves that they have this whole not necessarily taking responsibility, but thinking that they owe, thinking that the people owe them some sort of allegiance for becoming leaders, for taking up public office. And this, as my friend has said, this question of body language, it is very clear that people do not see our democratic experience from one that should be inclusive. People see our democratic experience from one that should serve the interest of a few. We are doing you a favor. And so this is a big challenge. This is something that we must be able to discern in 2020. And as he has said, the articulation of a vision, you must be able to talk to the people must be able to understand where you're coming from and where you're going.
On that, Mr.
There's something
Okoiname,
that happens in this country because of the
just
of the failure of public services, for example.
Just 1 second. On that question that you raised,
okay.
My apologies. That question that you raised on articulating vision, who should be taking the lead? I think we'll begin with that when we return from this break. Please stay with us. The leadership question. That's what we're talking about this morning. Let me take this to Simi Fajemiroku-Ajayi, who is an entrepreneur and a politician. Now, you listened to what Governor Obaseki said just before we took that Christmas greeting. First of all, what's your take? What's your perspective, your thoughts on the words of the governor?
I agree with the fact that the set of politicians from '99 have done. I don't like to talk in absolute terms. The ones who have done well have done well, but with everything, we're 20 years. We celebrated 20 years of democracy, military-free, the democracy-free from military interruption. And the truth is, there was really not that much to celebrate, except for, because the number one task of government is to secure and safeguard the lives of those, within it. We're currently having security issues. We currently have some economic challenges. And it's not a bad thing. I see, the politics is the art of the possible. And so in '99, the set of the classroom of politicians that presented themselves in '99 did show the art of the possible. So we went from an extreme of where people could not talk and where, civil society blossomed. We can see industries that took off. And even now, from the entertainment to the gig economy. So not everything is absolutely bad, but they have definitely, anything that goes on for 20 years without change will definitely begin to, the law of entropy will begin to turn on itself. And so the set that brought in the MTNs, the opening of the economy, are also the ones kind of strangling the country in terms of ideas and in terms of even the economy, but there's not a lot going on in terms of wealth creation. So the boom we saw from '99, possibly in the economy, to the mid 2000s, I mean, we're struggling, but this struggle is not a death sentence. This struggle is really a clamor for a new set of politicians that will take us for the next 20 years. So for me, when I see the problems that plague our country, and again, I just see it as we need a new injection of ideas, of new party players, because there's no football game and there's no basketball game, or there's really no world sports where you have one player or a set of players playing for 20 years and they'll continue to play with the same level of interest, energy, performance. Is just not possible. So if businesses are driven by human capital, if nations are driven by human capital, politics is driven by human capital. Where are the new guys at the new set of where are the new classroom of politicians? Not the whiners, not the ones that say Nigeria, we're done,
I don't know. I hope we'll have you back shortly, because one question that I want to put to you is, do you think we have the next class ready to take over just yet, given the level of distrust between government and especially the young people? You also heard the Governor Obaseki make reference to that, and the president of AFDB has often said the same thing about getting youths ready, getting them interested, and taking hold of the gauntlet. But Mr. Shuban, the question that we posed earlier, just before we took that break, is along the line of vision casting. There are those who believe or who opine that the challenge with Nigeria, and I think you also referenced it, in that politicians, when they come to office, they are only looking at 1 term or 2 terms, and that's it. But there are those who argue that the challenge Nigeria is having is successive because there is no national ethos, national vision that goes from one generation to another, to another, to another. There are those who reference the fact that after every military dispensation had been pushed out with advocacy without a clear national vision of what we want to achieve with the politics that we begin to play. So in terms of vision casting, who should be taking the lead? Because at the end of the day, it's still the same set of politicians who are in office that are in office.
Well, thank you very much, Ayo. If you watch within the same political parties, one person comes into office, sets out a vision, and he leaves. The same political party fields another candidate to continue with the tenure of the other person, and yet that same person from the same political party completely erase and remove the vision statement or whatever objective, whatever goals, whatever achievements the other person in his own political party had already accomplished, and erase it completely. Remove everything completely. So I gave that as an example to let us understand that sometimes our framework, our reference point of what we call vision, because any vision that does not leave a leader is not a vision. It's just something temporary. It's just a temporary wish. So for us to have a national vision, our national vision must draw on our collective identity, not necessarily our ethnic diversity. And because sometimes we overemphasize the diversity at the expense of our collective identity. Collective identity is that one thing that is primary, that's of primary importance to anyone in government, is the general welfare of the people. And like Simi said, the security of the people. Then they are also concerned about their future, their safety, their sense of identity. So our national vision, our national goal should be driven by those who claim to have the leadership capacity to lead us. They should help coordinate. They should help aggregate the ideas Nigerians are bringing forward. Nigerians are brilliant people. I sat down once at an event where the vice president was speaking and where he confessed to the fact that he used to assume before he got into politics and got into governance, that how come we have so many fantastic ideas that are not being implemented, that people are not bringing forward, until he got to government and saw that they are being bombarded daily with fantastic ideas by Nigerians and from Nigerians. So the question is, what is now responsible for the disconnect? It's not that we lack capacity for vision. It's not that we lack capacity, but what our vision has always been about is that it is not set out on a system or a structure that is successive. And that's why I recommended at the very beginning that for us to make progress and move forward as a nation, we need to develop a leadership system that operates right from the grassroots to the local level and down to the... For example, now, our current structure in this nation cannot sustain any visionary leadership and cannot assist any visionary to succeed. And why do I say that? Because the local governments are still not independent. They are still within the control of a few people. When I was growing up, local government politics was so important that that's where people evolve from. Leaders evolve from the local government. They are tested, they are trusted, they are known. That's where they groom vision from. Or that's where they groom. So when you look at our educational system is in such a way right now that any visionary leadership that you develop or that you try to sell to Nigerians is not sustainable. Why? Because our educational system is not designed to produce an exceptional Nigerian. It's not designed to produce an exceptional mind that can conceptualize and innovate things or work with ideas.
Mr. Shubade, what is missing?
That's what I'm highlighting. What is missing is basically competence, leadership competences. People assume that because they have held a position before, you have been local government chairman before, you have been governor before, that makes you a leader. No. What is missing is the leadership capacity, leadership competence.
Is that leadership competence supposed to be in the educational system that you mentioned?
It is one of the institutions that helps develop that competence. In fact, it is one of the most important institutions that helps develop leadership competence. Because that is where value systems are entrenched in the mind of a young person. Value systems of hard work, of honesty, of integrity. But the moment we treat that institution with levity, we talk down on the lecturers, talk down on the teachers, we don't cater for their welfare, they get into a position of compromise where they begin to abuse the students that they are supposed to be grooming. They abuse them financially, they abuse them morally, they abuse them physically, and until recent times, they abuse them sexually as well. And we can see what is going on with cultism in secondary school now. Look at the recent incident of the 12-year-old boy. That is the most important.
My apologies. I'll come to Mr. Okoineme in a moment, but I want to ask you as well, this, Mr. Shubande. Is that part of the reasons why you said leadership principles do not work in sub-Saharan Africa?
Thank you very much. It's part of one of the reasons, because whilst we are so much interested in Western ideologies, we've adopted all the Western ideologies and Western principles we've known. In fact, our system of government is built around these Western ideologies and Western mode of governance. But it does not work because it's not peculiar, it's not in tune with our cultural views and our cultural orientation. There are certain things that are peculiar to our history as a nation that we can build our leadership capacity on. Leadership is not foreign to us in this part of the world. It was not imported by the Western guys into our part of the world. No, we have leadership system already starting from the family, starting from the, if you check our history, if you check our culture, leadership was part of it. How were we doing it then? We had a leadership that had checks and balances. If you remember the story of the Oyomesis, where they appoint the kings and they checkmate a king that is becoming tyrannical. They have a structure of accountability. They have a structure of youth participation. They have a structure where there is succession plan. They know, look at the kingship structure in Ibadan, for example. Everybody knows who the next king will be. There's a succession plan. Therefore, there's opportunity for grooming, there's opportunity for growth, there's opportunity for education, there's opportunity, and everybody knows, and they prepare the person. That's what our culture provides. So right now, we are throwing and recycling people, like Simi said, because there's no training structure, there's no governance school, there's no leadership school where people are prepared and trained for leadership based on our cultural identity.
Okay. Well, Mr. Kweneme, given these, I suspect that you may agree to some of the things that Mr. Shobande has talked about, but given this, do you see the young generation being fully prepared for the next dispensation as leaders?
Of course, young people have demonstrated their capacity to lead in different fields of endeavor, as we have seen, be it in politics, in the economy, business, and all of that. And so, so the question is, how do you evolve a structure, a politics that harnesses all of this in terms of bringing young people into the fold, creating an inclusive process, a participatory process that gets young people to be part of the discussions in political parties? Because, of course, we know that political parties, beyond the struggle or beyond the contestation for power, are also supposed to be a vehicle for articulating new ideas, for articulating alternatives to dealing with the challenges in society. But we know that this engine has completely negated that aspect of, harnessing ideas, articulating and aggregating what people are thinking in terms of their understanding of the challenges in society. And so that is where we must begin to take interest in how do we mobilize or how do we organize with young people in a way that they are able to participate effectively in that political process from a point of empowerment, not from a point where they have been accustomed to. We were in Lagos with Simi about 3 weeks ago, where we had a convergence with young aspirants across the Southwest. And you could see the kind of conversation that was happening in those spaces. Do political parties present those sort of opportunities for young people to articulate what their creative minds are thinking of? Because we must rise above what Aya just said. Those, our ethnic diversities, they do not in any way represent who we are collectively. I'm just wondering, because the challenge is this. Yeah. As individuals, the state has failed. And so people, for example, if I, sitting here now, happen to get very sick, there's a huge possibility that those that will rise to my help are the people from my community. And so, because of the failure of the state, you will begin to see where self-help through ethnic gatherings and social gatherings. And so people begin to build their loyalty around those structures. And so if we are looking for a new leader, we must take those issues around how we respond to challenges in society to where the primary field of contestation of ideas are, which is, for example, in a democratic setting, is the political parties. So we must I was
just about to say the program which IAGA Africa, I believe, convened the Convergence 3.0. Don't you think it should have been happening within political parties?
Of course, but one of the things that we must recognize is that after the passage of the Not Too Young to Run law, it's important that collectively as a people, we do not now sit back and wait for institutions that are not ready to take on some of this responsibility. We have to force them to take those responsibilities. And what young people have demonstrated by holding the convergence and all of that is that new politics that we are talking about, that new way of doing things. Because we had in the room over 200 young people from different political divides. And they sat together and talked about the challenges they face in political parties, sat down and talked about what their aspirations are for the country.
Were the challenges similar?
Of course, the challenges have always been there, but what has not been happening is that an inclusive space that provides alternatives. And so that's what the Convergence is doing. And the Convergence is acting as an alternative, as a model that can be taken up by political parties to aggregate the concerns of young people, to aggregate their creative energies, and to aggregate their plans for the country into political capital. Because if you don't do that, we continue to play this old politics that has not taken us anywhere. Because whether you like it or not, we are in a world where ideas rule. Ideas rule. So what the Abu Dhabis of this world, what the Singapores of this world have done is translating ideas into vision and practicalizing it. And some of the things that also need to happen. At that Convergence, we had a conversation with Dr. Jumoke, who is presently heading the Vice President's initiative on ease of doing business. And one of the things she talked about was the fact that
that's like the Presidential Enabling Council.
Yeah. So while you are out there trying to put in structures that enables change to happen, there are 1,000,001 things undermining all of that. And so for change to happen, you must be able to negotiate values through all of these structures. Because if you don't do that, what will happen is that you sit on your high pedestal and think that by articulating some of these things, and that's where you see the disconnect between what government says it is achieving and what the people actually think is happening. Because at that level, people are as he said, people are bringing in proposals, people are bringing in ideas, they are putting it on the table, and governments, they're supporting all of those ideas, articulating them in policy documents and all of that. But that's where it ends. There are a whole lot of structures that needs to be dealt with. And that's where leadership takes, because leadership sees the whole picture. And we must build a system that helps the leader to see all of those pictures. And that's where that question of decentralization and local governance comes in. So where you have people...
I do know that yesterday we had a very long conversation as well on direct and indirect primaries. I understand that Simi is no longer with us online. It would have been interesting to know what her perspective will be on this direct and indirect primaries conversation. But, you know, this is part of what they think will get the people more involved in politics. So far, so good. The Electoral Act amendment bill has suffered a setback as the president has vetoed it, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in the coming days. But what are your thoughts? I do not know if you have been interested, if you've followed this conversation on the Electoral Act amendment bill, Toye, and what you think about whether or not the conversation around direct and indirect primaries, even though we have been told that's not the most important aspect of the bill, how do you think that is going to shape who is eventually thrown up, or the people who are eventually thrown up at different levels in the political parties? Do you think it will make any difference at all?
At all. Not because I want to sound very pessimistic in any way. It is not going to change anything. It's the same script. We're just running through the script. And as a people, we've learned to be very reactionary and give knee-jerk reaction to things, rather than actually take a proactive step towards it. The body language has always been there. I've heard people say it on several of your shows here that they were not surprised, that they were expecting that the bill would be vetoed. So the question is, something took that long. There's a pattern to the style of rulership of those who are in power. We should have studied that pattern long enough to take a proactive action or advocacy, like Kenneth was suggesting, towards making this a national conversation consistently, such that people at the grassroots and at all levels are able to come up with ideas, come up with things that will influence the thought of those in rulership, and they'll be able to actually get the feedback from Nigerians. But everybody kept quiet. We were waiting. Then when the result comes out, we're now reacting. Nothing is going to happen. We are just going to continue to react. And those who are in rulership in this nation, they know us. They understand the people they are leading or they are ruling. They understand the people they are ruling. They understand the psyche of the people they are ruling. They know we all go to social media, shout, make noise, react. Nothing is going to happen. It's still going to be the same script. So the question is to follow us with the likes of Kenneth and what is being done right now. And I love the question you asked, Margaret, when you said that meeting that was held for the Southwest guys, youths in Lagos a while back, should have been something that should be taking place within the political parties. And that is the idea I think our generation have the opportunity to begin to sell to political parties right now. We need to begin to actually penetrate the political parties and begin to campaign for an effective leadership system and effective leadership structure that addresses this direct and indirect system of, electing our representatives. Until that is done, it will not become a national culture. What we have seen that has become a national culture, where individuals will veto a thing, or where a group of people will sit down and just come up with their own opinion without regard for the interest of the people, will stop. It will continue if we don't do that. So we have an opportunity right now to infiltrate into the political system. We have the numbers, but what are we doing with the numbers? We're on social media shouting. We should leave the social media and go straight into the political parties, study their ideology, study their philosophy. I still have the manifesto of UPN. I still have it in my library, and I read it. So I'm asking the current political
Toye, and we'll be asking you what you read in the manifesto of UPN shortly, but let me quickly ask Simi, who I understand is back. Simi, it's good to have you back. I'm wondering, this debate over direct and indirect primaries, I do know that you said that you had an experience once where the mode of primaries was changed overnight. Do you think that it will make a significant difference if we're restricted to just one form of primaries, which is the direct primaries?
Thank you very much, and I apologize for the internet issue. Honestly, again, we've been talking about systems, and this, which is why I like the quote. We don't rise to the level of our goals; we fall to the level of our systems. So, whether it's direct or indirect primaries, what systems do we have around them? So, like I was saying before, I logged off. The key indicator of progress is brain power, right? It's human capital, and how much are we investing in the human capital in the political system? Why am I going in this direction? Who are the secretaries in the political party? Do they know how to use a laptop? Do they use a laptop? Because when INEC asks the political parties to submit something, the official holder of the post usually is written out on a piece of paper. How do you collect signatures? Is somebody writing on a piece of paper and then going around collecting, signatures? So everything is so in the political party system is so brick and mortar that is where the perversion comes from. So direct primaries, indirect primaries. When you say direct primaries, how many people? Who are the data scientists in the political party? Where's the data stored in political parties? If they're on exercise books, there is no way you can actually have, right, an accurate number of party members. When you ask a lot of political parties, they throw bogus numbers. Show us who the card-carrying members, how many you are. Show the database. I can tell you for a fact, most parties don't have it. So when you say direct primaries,
a little more attention to that part.
Yes, because show me your party members, then I can tell you, okay, you can do direct primaries. Because if you can do direct primaries, if you don't even know how many members you are in your political party, guess what? You have already corrupted your political process, your election process. Why? Who is going to vote? Cat, dog, mouse? How do we know you're a member of the party? From my experience, when they change it to direct primaries, they said, okay, no problem. How will you know who is a member of the party to vote in the primary elections tomorrow? They said, oh, we will appoint the youth leader They will nominate, they will see who their members are, will tell you who the woman leaders to stand in front, they will see who their members are. We will also call the ward chairman to also use his eyes to see who the members of the party. I mean, it's ridiculous. So when you're arguing direct or indirect, let's talk about data in political parties. Do they actually have the data? How does INEC collect data? Is it in written form? Is it in electronic form? How is it stored? How is it managed to make sure it's not manipulated? If you go with indirect primaries, the same issue. Who are delegates? How are they selected? I don't really have a problem with indirect or direct problem. I have a problem with a lack of clarity of mission. Because if your mission for elections are not clear, your outcome is botched. Your outcome is going to be corrupted. Your outcome is going to be perverse. And this is why what we're seeing is we focus too much on individuals and personalities. What we're really seeing is a lack of a system within the political parties that leaves so much room for the process to be corroded or corrupted. So I don't think political parties do sleep and wake up and say, how are we going to be the most corrupt or the most foolish election? How are we going to run the most, inept or inefficient election possible? I don't think they wake up to do that. I just don't think there's systems in place. So I think if they're going to, if going back to my statement, if brain power is the main primary generator of progress, then what is the brain power behind our political parties? Not Ankara, not dancing, not sharing watches and sunglasses or food or 500 naira. Where is the brain power in our political parties? I think once we have that discussion, then we can actually have a discussion. Do we want indirect? Because then we talk about a matter of style. But I'm saying we don't even have a culture of efficiency on our political parties. We don't. For us to even, I think one of the issues is that we think we have arrived in our democracy. We actually have not. It's the problem. The reason we're not learning politically is that we assume we actually have a democracy. What we have is a hodgepodge, something that just allows us to say we came up with candidates, and it's a false dilemma to say that Nigeria will continue to have election irregularities. I believe absolutely the opposite. I believe Nigeria has the opportunity to show Africa what elections look like. And we have a semblance of it because Nigeria is a big country. So for the elections that we do have, there's some great things that do happen because it's not actually easy, right, to deliver elections. But let's put our systems in place. Data, data, data. If you want to do direct primaries, no problem. Show us your numbers. Show us your card-carrying members. Not a piece of paper. Many, during my experience.
Simi, I did say earlier that you do have an experience that should be documented in a book and could take the whole of the 2 hours that we have on this show. But we're totally out of time, and I'm sure that you've given us enough to ponder upon as Nigerians and also members of political parties and those who are also outside of the political parties who need to be very interested in what is happening within political parties. Thank you very much for your contributions this morning. You've been listening to Simi Fajamirokun Ajayi, who is a managing partner at Acropolis Consulting and also a former aspirant for the House of Representatives in 2019. We have also been speaking here in our Abuja studios with Kenneth Okoineme, who is a member strategy team of the Not Too Young to Run movement. He's also been a national advisor, People for Change, with Action Aid. Thank you so much for your thoughts this morning.
It's my pleasure.
We're hoping that the convergence idea, you take it within the political parties as well, and let us see.
That's where we're heading to.
Yes, well, let us see how that, happens within the coming days. And we've also been speaking with Toye Shobande, who is a strategic leadership consultant and a lawyer as well. He's also the president Stevens Leadership Consultancy and member International Leadership Association and a doctoral candidate in strategic leadership, Regent University in the United States. He joined us via Zoom from London. Toye, thank you so much for being a part of the program this morning. Well, you can bet that we intend to keep this issue on leadership on the front burner. We will not let go and we will not let up until we begin to see the sort of people who we believe can lead us to the Nigeria of our dreams. At this point, we take a break and we'll be back in a moment with another topic. Please stay with us. Well, while we raise the leadership question, there are also important issues to be raised around voter education. Hence, our guest this morning, Mr. Victor Aluko, is the Director of Voter Education and Publicity at the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and compliments of the season.
I wish you the same. It's so easy to forget that we're still in the period of Christmas. But yes, we are. But we're already projecting into 2022 yes. And the Herculean job of work that INEC will have on its hands. What do you think will be the biggest challenge of educating the voting public in 2022?
The biggest challenge is actually our ability to generate interest in the 2023 elections. We must generate interest within the Nigerian public, because when you look at the situation today, people are sort of concerned with so many things. Family issues, socio-political issues, socio-economic issues, and within that mix, we must generate interest in the elections so that people will actually participate effectively. That is the greatest challenge. Getting people to participate.
That's very telling. Voter apathy seems to be the biggest challenge you have on your hands, and it will be really a Herculean job of work that INEC will have, you know, in trying to overcome that. But I imagine that you're not going to be working alone.
No.
I think that sometimes if you're able to identify why people have this apathy, perhaps addressing it might be a lot easier. Have you been able to see, well, I know you've pointed out a number of issues,
yes,
you know, socio-economic problems, etc. But, you know, for some people too, they say a lack of trust in the system and not being able to relate the outcome so far with what they have. How do you keep telling them that, look, it is related to your current situation and this can be the solution?
No, the important thing really is that as a commission, people must have trust in us. We must be credible. And of course, you know, in the past years, INEC has become a very credible organization. In fact, the editorial of this day, of Trust yesterday, described INEC as perhaps the most improved public institution in Nigeria today. So I believe that people are seeing a new INEC in terms of our ability to deliver and in terms of our ability to be fair, to be credible, and to serve the yearnings of voters who ordinarily before would just say, is it not INEC? But today we're a very credible organization. And another thing is
that should make your job easy.
It should. At least that's a good foundation. And as I said, the atmosphere, the political electoral atmosphere goes beyond INEC. But for us, we identified a number of issues that has to do with us as an institution in terms of making sure that people are able to access polling units. On election day, if the place you will vote is so far away from you, that's the first area of discouragement. Because a voter must wake up in his house. Where is cloth, either take his bag or not, where is cloth, move out of his house to the polling unit to go and vote. It's a very important decision, a very important activity. So we don't take it for granted. So we try our best to make sure we expand the polling units in the country so that the units will be nearer to the people, so that you don't have to walk long distances to vote. That is one thing. Secondly, we try to also make the procedures credible. Make the procedures credible. In the elections we conducted recently, we talked about technology, using technology to be able to reduce the human decision-making process. You know, human beings were created by God too. We can do either good or bad. Technology is technology. So we brought these issues of using equipment. Before we were using smart card readers. Now we are talking about the bimodal voter registration system. We also brought what we call the INEC result view portal to make sure that people are able to see the result at the polling unit, so that nobody goes to the collation center and starts calling 108-801. So these are the issues that, as an institution, we have improved a lot. So it's important for an institution like this, like us, to improve. Another thing, for the country itself, the people must choose their leaders. People must be encouraged to choose well. There are two different things: choosing leaders and choosing well. So it's not only for INEC. We collaborate, of course, with all the stakeholders.
So tell us the difference on that, choosing leaders and choosing well.
Because we try to encourage voters that you should know who you are voting for. Nowadays, in many elections, local government elections, area council elections, state assembly elections, many voters don't even know who they vote for. They just go there. They don't even know the person. They just go there to vote for the party and then they go away. You should know the candidate you are voting for. Who is he? What has he done? What is he bringing to the table? What will he do for your constituency? So there's a difference between just going to vote and voting well. As a developing country, we want people to vote well, because decisions people make when they become leaders, when they go to assemblies, when they be state assemblies, even the councillor, the local government councillor or something, decisions people make are important to the lives of people. So people must be able to choose leaders well, so that they'll be able to reap the dividends of democracy. When we talk about dividends of democracy, it's not just for saying it. Leaders must lead well. And sometimes, if you're not a good leader, how do you lead well? So these are the issues, and so we believe that we must generate interest in the 2023 elections. We try our best to do that in every electoral cycle, and we try to collaborate with those agencies, stakeholders, the media, the other stakeholders, the political parties, the civil society organizations, to be able to, let Nigerians know that the time for elections have come again, and you have to vote. And these are the things you have to do. Another thing is, as a commission, we also try our best to prepare voters. Because you don't just come on election day and say, yes, our polling units are open, come and go and vote. No. You must prepare each voter for the election. Each voter is unique. We are all different people with different problems, with different ideas.
So what does preparing the voter involve?
One, those who have not registered, you must provide a platform for them to register. And when they register, you have to print their PVCs, permanent voters cards, and give to them. Those who have problems with their registration, who have problems with their cards, there are people who maybe they went to vote before, they had cards, their names were not in the register, their names were in the register, their cards were already defaced, all that. So people who have problems, you have to solve those problems. If people have defaced or damaged or lost cards, you encourage them to come up. Let us know. We'll give you new ones.
I was just about to, I thought that voter registration was going to be a special question.
Okay.
You're putting on that preparation of voters.
You have to prepare the voter for the election.
What I would like to know is how, because I do know that in the past, and I know that there have been attempts to make the process easier. That's what I was saying in the past. Okay. It used to be a little cumbersome. Even things as simple as changing your polling unit, which ought to be easier. We're told that, you have to write a letter to the INEC chair. Are we still, is it still that way? How easy is it to change your polling unit, for instance?
The process is quite simple. Changing the polling unit means you want to transfer your registration from one place to the other. You can transfer within your local government. You can transfer within your state. You can transfer from one state to the other. All you need to do is, when we're having CVR, you go to the registration center, and you let the registration official know this is what you want to do, whether you want to transfer, Whether your card is damaged or lost, you need another one. Or whether you have issues with your data. So you let them know this is what I want. I want to transfer. Okay, I'm in Abuja. I live in Abaji. I want to transfer to Buhari. So you are in the center in Abaji. You are in our office in Abaji. And of course, immediately the officer there will give you a form. We have forms. You just fill that form. You fill that form. Of course, we expect you to, like your passport photograph. You know, at least you must show some level of responsibility that you are really serious. Your passport photograph. And of course, you bring your former card. So that's all you have to do. So the official... Is
it going to be done at the local government, or where is this
for CVR? For CVR now, we normally do at the local government office or our state offices or the FCT office. You have to go in person to be able to do that. You know, so that's
still a little clumsy.
It's not clumsy because it's not clumsy. Another thing is that we also have the online thing. If really you're not able to go immediately, you can access our CVR registration portal online, and immediately you type CVR-INEC-Nigeria.org. It comes up, it pops up, whether you're using your mobile, whether you're using your laptop, and then you begin to input your data. You begin to say what you want, just like other portals for other things. What you want is you want to transfer, you click. Then it starts giving you the things. Then you now go later to go and complete it when you have time.
Why?
So it's very easy.
The reason why some of these things are extremely important to bring up is because it will seem that consistently every electoral cycle, certain demographics are... Okay. Certain demographics are disenfranchised by nature of, just who they are. For instance, students, especially university students, oftentimes during elections, schools close. They ask students to go home. Many times when the registration process is happening, it's happening within schools or happening around schools. And when they close, when the students go home, it means that if they're at home and they're in different states or a different place, they might not be able to vote. Security personnel who are going to be, very busy during the election period are also oftentimes disenfranchised. Journalists who cover the, maybe you shouldn't say INEC officials as well.
Of course, because we too will be on the field.
And it would seem that these classes of people over the years, it's just been taken for granted that they rarely vote because of the nature of work that they do.
It's true.
Is INEC looking at anything to make it easier for these classes of people to be able to vote regardless of where they might be on election day as a result of their duties?
Okay, before, so let me just say that we encourage people, like students now, we try to encourage people to register where they want to vote. We say you should be resident in that registration area or that local government where you want to vote. Our system, we have not really set a system where you can vote anywhere. Maybe in future we'll get there, but we have not gotten there. I believe we'll get there. Then there's all this use of absentee voting. There's use of voting before the election day like they do in the US. We have not gotten to that stage. But I believe that as we develop, we will get there. So for now, we encourage people to actually register where they want to vote. If you are a student and you are in Abuja University, and there are centers, let's say, okay, now we are in Abuja University, we encourage you to put when you go to our office to register on the CVR, put the address of your house in Wuse. If you are going to be with your parents in Wuse, it's the same thing all over the country. Because on election day, you won't be in school.
Can you register in school but use the address of your parents' house? Is it possible?
What you're saying is, you can start online as a student.
Okay.
You can start online, and then during the weekend, you can start online. During the weekend, you go to the FCT office, and of course, you state where your parents live, where you live with your parents. So when of course, your address will come up. The reason is that when we are allocating people to where they will vote, you have to be located to the polling unit within that ward. So you know, registration is not like before, where we just roll out 120,000 registration centers like we used to do many years ago. Now it's a simplified version, and it's not everybody that's registering. It's only for certain persons who did not register before, people who are now of age, who did not register before. You know, those are the ones we call to come and register, and they're not really that plenty. It's not as if 50 million people will become registered. No.
Well, we do know that, you know, after people have registered, getting people to come and take their cards has also been a challenge.
We try our best to also let people know. When we get your data, we also get your phone numbers, email, you know, for people who have email addresses, and we try to let you know. We try to let you know that your card is now ready. Like the FCT now, by next week, we'll start distributing the cards we have printed for about 39,000 persons. So we'll communicate with them one-on-one to let them know. We communicate with them not only once. In fact, many times we'll be sending messages to them, because it's important that you collect your permanent voter's card so that you can vote. If you registered during the CVR wording and you did not collect the card, then you are just half a voter. You are not a complete voter.
So let me put it this way. Someone has just moved to, say, Abuja, for instance. Yes. I don't know where my polling unit is. I don't know anything about, because you don't see polling units until the election days, oftentimes. How is the person able to identify where he or she will be voting, or, you know, what is the political arrangement in his or her area ahead of the elections?
There are two things you can do. You can go to the local government office, to the electoral officer, and physically ask him. You physically ask him, and he will show you the records where you're supposed to vote. Or you can also check your registration status online. You can check your registration status online by, of course, going to the INEC.org, www.inec.org, going to our website, and then click on the status area. So you'll be able to see the ward you are. And if you're in your ward, that ward, and the polling units in the ward, one thing on election day is that when voters come to the polling unit, there are people who don't even know which particular unit. Maybe there's a unit here, 100 meters away, there's another unit. Of course, we have an assistant presiding officer who will look at your card and let you know that, Oga, just go to the other side. So we try to solve these problems and make it easy for people, you know.
So the website is a place to go. I think that's what our producers are already scrolling for you on television, www.inec.org. And if your card is missing or stolen, how do you go about it?
If your card is missing or stolen, you know, you have opportunity, like I said, during the voter registration to present yourself, to request for a replacement. Actually, replacement is your right, but you can't do it by proxy. You have to ask for it, you know, because the cards are printed with money. So
you must go to the INEC office in the local government before you can get that process started. You don't start from online if your card is missing.
I told you that you can start online.
Okay.
Either for replacement or maybe, because once you type CVR, INEC.org, the portal pops up, and of course, in the portal, just like any other thing, you say what you want to do. Is it that you want to register afresh? Is it that you want a replacement of your card? You know, then you start, you know, acting according to the dictates of what is coming up for you. Okay. And if you also can easily get to our office, then it's even very okay. You just go and talk to the electoral officer, who of course will courteously attend to you, because that is his work. We are to serve the people. That's why we're there.
Okay, we look forward to your service in the coming days. I think the Nigerians will let us know how you have served them. I want to believe that people will certainly give us feedback of what it has been like Do let us know if your experience is positive or otherwise. We're hoping that it will not be. But if it is otherwise, we certainly will get word across to Mr. Victor Aluko, who will be disturbing in a few. Will be disturbing a lot in 2022, you know, to at least let us know what is happening with regards to voter education voter education and enlightenment. We have to thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Edit this morning.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with Mr. Victor Aluko, who is the Director, Voter Education and Publicity at INEC. Well, I'm trying to see if we have a few of your feedback. Yes, they have come in. We have this one from Famous Milenyi talking about voter education. He says, we are forgetting one government agency when it comes to masses education, which is the National Orientation Agency, NOA. The NOA should stand up to its responsibilities. INEC cannot be doing all the education alone. So INEC certainly a partner for you to work with there. Thank you very much for that, Famous.
Olaguju Oladele, on the leadership question, says it is very important to determine if our leadership style can work within the existing political culture. In Nigeria, culture impacts the leadership style that will be effective within our political structure. Does our political culture support centralized decision-making or decentralized decision-making?
And Peter Asso has this one, says, I think if we want a perfect election, we should handle debates amongst the candidates and screen through their manifestos. Then we will know what they have to offer. See how the U.S. scores with debates. It's a start.
On the same issue, Henry Okeke says, this is a time to get our best hands on our various, let me take that again. This is the time to get our best hands in our various leadership desks. Political parties must deliberately recruit young candidates who are capable of leadership. Instead of clamoring for direct or indirect primaries, we should be rooting for independent candidature as a panacea for incompetent political parties' candidates.
And Professor Chris Inakena says leadership entails the ability to think independently outside the box, with the ability to transform mundane thoughts to empirical reality above the... Okay, that just went off now. I'm looking for that particular mail again. Yes, I'm going to take that again as well. Leadership entails the ability to think independently outside the box, with the ability to transform mundane thoughts to empirical reality, ability to evolve with transcendental and moral thoughts, with ideals and wisdom that is espoused and engendered with a vision that is intertwined between leaders and the led. Well, he did say he's a professor, so that has to come through in the mail.
Well, you have to feel it somehow. Abdul Salam Yusuf says, leadership development process, the process of selecting a leader has been made unnecessarily complicated by the number of political parties on the ballot papers. If we have free, fair and credible primary elections from a maximum of 4 political parties, that will eventually be on the final presidential ballot papers in 2023, the electoral process will be relatively credible and easily managed.
HK Eze says the definition of leadership is vision and influence. I agree that we need to move the conversation from leadership recruitment process to leadership development process. We assume that we have capable leaders waiting to take up the positions of authority in the country, but our experience has shown that this is not always the case. However, if we fix the leadership development process in the country, then we will have a pool of eligible candidates for leadership positions.
Well, so many other messages have come in. John Ogolo and a number of others. Well, that's actually John Ogolo's one there. We thank you, and several others who sent in their messages. Thank you so much for being a part of this program this morning, and have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
And I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.